We can just start diving into everything Theta. Did you happen to catch the AMA for the Theta team?
I did. I actually liked it. I think it's going to be pretty interesting what they're going to do with T drop. And I also like how they're looking to get into the telecommunications more, which I think will be huge for them for the edge nodes.
Yeah, I think the telecommunications side is massive, especially like with what Mitch said about each device becoming their own edge node basically, and it's just like a relayer, and there's no like static like just because there's going to be so much consumption of utility and data flowing through these devices. Uh, each one just becomes part of this giant web that we're going to see going forward here.
Absolutely. It's going to be really, really interesting. And that's going to pair off, I believe, in some way to their rebrand for T drop because they're going to work AI agents into that. And all those AI agents, robots, robotics, um, cars, whatever, what have you, are all going to be nodes themselves. So it's really interesting to see how T drop works into that.
I
Or
think
subchains, I believe.
I think T drop is super slept on just because it's like the perfect testing ground and beta environment to utilize the token and then push beyond that with the Tfuel and engaging with the edge nodes then and gives the teaser environment for those companies to get a taste of what tokens can do, and then they can expand from there and really get down to the actual utility layer through edge nodes themselves.
Oh, I agree. And I think Mitch was hitting on a point with the chatbots being strategic. And I guess he had kind of mentioned a paraphrase that, some people uh, may not fully understand or like how the chatbots are laying. I think it's a great feature. I think it's a great way to segue into how this whole data network, edge cloud, uh, agents, subchains are all going to come together. I think it's brilliant, to be honest with you.
Yeah, there needs to be some kind of bridge to the crypto space, and I think the you're right. The chat, like even when we stayed in Resorts World for the previous ThetaCon, the checkout process it basically was an agent on your phone. So this is really getting uh, intermixed into every part of our society basically. So it's just this is just the beginning, and that is the perfect segue into okay, well, it can do this. Now what else can it do? And then Theta's standing right there waiting in the wind, ready to enable these new products and services for these large corporations, and they trust them and they built this reputation. I think that is the most slept on thing I think about Theta is that it's like not it's a foundation. It can't be built oblong, and it has to be built structurally from the base up, and that does take time.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I'm not sure if people are really aware. All everybody who's following Theta, and because it seems like people have their own ideas on what it might be, but this is a software layer for all of them. Well, I can't say all of NVIDIA right now, but they're looking to bridge this software, this edge cloud software, into NVIDIA hardware, and it's already integrated into a portion. And to what was also said uh, on the AMA with Google and their GPUs and all these other companies looking to build chips, Data is just integrating that software onto those chips and making compute more accessible where they don't have to build X number more of GPUs. I apologize, they will build them, but to collectively get those GPUs through a software network is just, it takes time, but it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant.
It definitely hits on the hardware agnostic piece of Theta and the power that brings going forward. Especially, we highlighted in one of our videos how the ability to produce from natural resources chips will hit a point where something like Theta needs to be there to help the just the amount of ingestion of compute along the process, because there is a physical constraint in terms of what the resources they can pull out of the ground, the timeliness of it, the amount of the interest rates dropping to then provide the capital to these organizations to then make these maneuvers happen, through the whether debt or any of these things. So there are financial constraints, there's resource constraints, and then Theta is just perfectly sitting there, just prime, as like an assistant to this major maneuver, competing with all the nations all at once right now. So it's super cool to see.
No, it really is, absolutely is. And your video, I think you posted it today because I listened to it. I don't know if you posted it last night or today. And you had even mentioned nuclear. Nuclear is going to be key in this. Larry Ellison, he's already looking to build out a small nuke plant for his data centers. I'm sure there's others, but his I read was public, and that came out, I believe, it may have been early spring or late winter of this year. I don't know when it was, but to your point, what they have to pull out of the ground, the electrical grid isn't going to be enough. If they can throw some solar at it, I know Elon Musk is very big on solar, which is good, I guess. But they're looking for as much power as they can get, and for Theta to be able to fill that gap on the hardware side through software, in my opinion. I don't think they could be positioned any better. And by the way, everything I say is not financial advice. None of this is financial advice, but this is just the way I see this whole network rolling out with the hardware, the electrical grid, the nuclear power plants these guys are building. To your point, rate cuts, I see rate cuts happening next week. To what degree, I don't know. It's going to free up capital. So, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it really is a foot race right now. So the ability to have that credit is very important, because you also have those other elements, the resources themselves that you need to get mobilizing. And yes, solar fits well as a supplement for the residential, but for these huge data centers and standing up this level of compute capacity, it just does not meet the bar. And nuclear, bringing costs as low. Bitcoin really brought about the monetary incentive to creating cheap free energy by putting a dollar value on the creation. So as they bring the cost lower, their profits increase. So there is a direct incentive, a direct game theory game for that. And then what's really different, I think, that people don't realize about Theta is that, and we've talked about this in previous, is unlike energy, as energy costs go down, you can do more with it, but with the data continues to expand as things get cheaper. So as things get cheaper, the more of it there is going to be. So it's not like, oh, it's cheap now, so therefore there's no value capture. No, the value capture is even larger for something like Theta.
Absolutely. And, I know, I believe I don't know if it's going to be fully rolled out by the end of 2025, but they're going to start rolling out the storage for Edgecloud. And that's an enormous sticky service for any of these companies who are going to be using the Edgecloud for compute, because they're going to want to put it somewhere, and it's a one-stop shop. And that helps the deflation on Tfuel for the burn. It makes things much more. It just makes everything easier for the customer to come in and say, "Great, I have storage. I'm able to run this. I can scale up my compute almost exponentially, and reduce my costs at the same time." It's a win. It's a 360 win everywhere. It's great.
It's crazy to think that not many people are seeing this right now, and they're their value and the prospects of that isn't forward looking in the way that we see it, especially considering the constraints that are ahead of us. The need for these things is tremendous because the data is not going away. It is only going to feed upon itself and just expand. So, with that being said, the I think the partnership with Aether I think was a great thing, especially getting really good hardware with the boosters there, enabling extra work to be done underneath under the surface, and then kind of setting the stage for what edge nodes can truly be. And I think you have highlighted this in previous where there will be a run towards edge nodes and elite boosters especially because of the fact that that hardware will become just a machine maneuvering capital around.
Yeah, and that's what I think whenever I post about boosters. That's the enterprise level, right? That's your AWSs, your Alibabas, your Googles, your Microsofts, and for them to be able to lock up a large portion of Tfuel to add to their compute, for people who aren't watching that software version of what I believe is going to happen, that's an enormous unseen competitive advantage for anyone who's going to lock this up on that type of scale. It essentially says, yeah, you lock up, say AWS locks up 1,000 fully loaded boosters at 1 million, right? And
Mm-hmm.
their compute capacity just went through the roof overnight, and it's and they're going to, the idea that I believe for Tfuel is also, I believe they're going to reduce staking requirements at a certain point, and I put out that a round number, say 100,000. Whether that's a number or not, I have no idea. I just made it a round number, right?
Mm-hmm.
And say you need 100,000 Tfuel to qualify to lock into a booster. The idea is to have Tfuel, all of Tfuel locked up, where it's not traded. It's not a traded token where, I get 10,000 and, I'm going to short it or long it, on a small scale. People will do it on a larger scale, but that's not the point of this. The point is to lock that up and give the optimum amount of compute to not only the network, but to these larger companies and even mid-sized companies that could afford those boosters at that time. It's going to be wild to see.
The locking up of Tfuel is what I think is really interesting. We've spoken about the flywheel and how if Tfuel in dollar value just hits certain price points, obviously not financial advice, but the wheel and the flywheel just starts spinning much more smoothly, and the incentives for the non large entity starts to grow very drastically, and there becomes this very competitive space for that Tfuel in terms of edge node providing, and it's why we really started with Theta Communications. Was we realized that, hey, we need to accelerate or help accelerate this process, because the faster we get that flywheel moving, the faster we onboard these mid and small organizations, and then it just takes off on its own. And once it's going, it's going. There's no turning back from there. So, Mitch has mentioned on the AMA, he hinted at robotics and full self-driving and utilizing hardware within these vehicles as edge nodes, basically. And that is massive because there's amazing amount of GPU within these vehicles, especially when they're not using LiDAR and varying other technologies. They're actually training and learning. These vehicles at idle state are essentially edge nodes themselves. So if that can be tapped into, that is a major win for Theta and the overall building out of compute and AI data ingestion as a whole.
Oh, without a doubt. And the back end revenue on that for all those nodes sitting there is going to be astronomical to those companies as well. I mean, if you take what you guys are doing over at Theta Communications and you're offering, say, a mid-sized company that doesn't have a tremendous amount of hardware and they don't want to go out and buy it, and they buy a reduced, whenever this happens, a reduced booster. And, they don't have to go out and find GPUs and find how they're going to scale up their compute. You're giving you're giving that platform to those entities, and not only a competitive advantage, you're actually, you're helping them grow not only for the network but for themselves too. It's a great, all the node providers, great what the node providers are doing, and then you bake in the robotics, the cars, and whatever other industries are going to be built out of this. It's just it's gonna be great to see all this scale up.
The reason I bring that up is that is something I had thought about a few years back, which is, does a like I'm not a super big fan of electric vehicles per se, but with the GPU capacity that's built into these electric vehicles, does a Tesla potentially get cash flow positive by becoming an edge node while sitting in your garage, earning you revenue while you are asleep, and basically turning something, that a vehicle which is considered a deflationary asset, into maybe a neutral or net positive asset, going into the new era.
I think absolutely. Uh, I think you're going to see this with phones, uh, and cars, that even if they're not profitable, it's almost like a form of universal basic income, right? If you're leasing or you're buying a Tesla, and whatever your payment is on that a month, and it sits idle most of the day, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
most people aren't driving their cars 12, 14 hours a day. They leave for work or whatever they're doing. And if they can let that run for even a work day, and then while they're sleeping, and that pays for their insurance and their car payment, that's a huge win. That sells the car itself, number one. And then you look at it where, you have a phone as well. So if you chop off your phone bill eventually, and you chop off your car payments and your insurance payments, I mean, it sells itself. And I'm not a big fan of electric either. I like gasoline or diesel, but
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, the electric cars work well in cities, and it's very concentrated there, or close or near about cities. New York, a lot of people don't have cars, but the outer boroughs may have cars, and if they're driving and they let it sit, I think it's a no-brainer. But you're absolutely right. I think that even if there's no profit on it, even if there's net zero where they're just breaking even, it's a huge win.
I think this plays into two, that Tesla, I think trading over 30 times price to earnings, um, but the understanding that this is where potentially this hardware is going, and then also the fact that they are going to dictate at first how the revenue is shared. So the company itself may benefit initially, but then there will be a competitive rotation towards rewarding those who purchase and those who acquire Tesla vehicle per se, right? So this change and this shift, things are getting so deflationary so quickly. I was talking to some friends about this with, like, Austin, Texas, right? Austin, Texas has some robo taxis currently functioning all through the city, and a drive across town is like $9 for the full self-driving or autonomous robo taxi, and then the person driver, the one with the human being driving you, is like $25 or $30. So the deflationary effects are hard on jobs, but through this process there is a net gain or net benefit to actual society in bringing costs down for transportation, and being able to open up these new job segments, I believe, within this pipeline of data oil, basically. And you've talked about that. You talk about how data is the new oil. Could you hit on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, I had a conversation with a friend about a month ago, almost exactly what you were talking about, and we were talking, and he was saying how he doesn't want to work for anybody anymore, but he doesn't know what to do. And I actually gave the idea of the car. I said, buy a fleet of Teslas. Now, a fleet might be a lot. I said, start with one. And I said, have it. It's going to be autonomous. Put it in your driveway. Someone can get that car at any time that you're not. You say you're not going to use it from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Put it out on the open market. It's going to pull out of your driveway. You have no idea where it's going. It's going to drop people off, do whatever it needs to do, and come back, and you can earn money on that. And I'm thinking about what you had said, how to say a company like Tesla would take a portion of that, and they would. They're a node provider just like Theta Communications, right? So they say, okay, we'll take 3% of the revenue you're going to get off of using the car because it's our company, right? But you can have 97% of it. That's the way I see it. I see everything's going to be a node. Optimus is going to be a node. Data revenue, right? They're going to sit there when your maid's not going to be doing your laundry, doing your dishes, cleaning your house, and it's going to stand in the corner at nighttime. It's going to run and generate revenue for you because it's going to offload that compute power that's not using during the day. That's where I see all the oil at. So the oil's not coming from the ground anymore as such for computers. It's coming through all these devices networking together to power whatever else needs to be powered when it's not being used.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So that the data is the new oil. It's this inflection point that we as humans will not be able to basically get enough of it, and the limiting constraint is the hardware as well as the power generation. And that's where I think power generation is probably one of the most important things of this little chapter of history that we're going through right now. And it's why I see so many people trying to fund and build out new innovations and new ways to generate power. I think in Arizona or down there, they're building I believe it's like almost like a hydroelectric drop or a synthetic pond where they have solar that brings water to the top, and then at night it releases it at a certain rate down using gravity. So there's all sorts of crazy ideas that are coming about to get to a very low power generation. And from there, then we then really start building that. I call it like the second layer of the world, which is that digital layer. Because most of the real estate right now is very, I would say, like overvalued in terms of like people have extracted a lot of the physical value, but what really hasn't been tapped yet is the digital landscape. And that I think is where the opportunity is, just like early days of cell phones, where the plans were extracting from people per text message or per 100 text message, right? So,
Yep.
like what you said with Tesla, they will take their cut, and it's because that is the progression and the way to building out to get to the unlimited data plan. Like we are not there yet to getting to unlimited compute. We still have probably a decade plus to getting to that point with all the other restraints that are around it. So to me, when you see business models like that, just see how cell phones progressed, how people were paying for internet time in the 90s per minute or per half an hour to use it. So these progressions, there is so much value capture in front of it, and that is why we're in this space, is because we need to be in the highest value capture area, while the traditional jobs and the traditional spaces are falling to the wayside. I think China has a couple dark factories right now, which are factories that have no humans, have no lights, and they are just running like a machine, basically. So that we are just hitting the beginning phase of this, and it's really exciting to be on the journey with you.
No, it's great. I mean, I love what you guys are doing. I think it's great what you're doing. It's visionary because no one's really looking at this space. Very few people are. I know, a lot of the people. I'm only on X. I do have a Discord account I never really use.
Mm-hmm.
I never use it at all actually. But on the X, I use, and you're familiar with all the people on X, and they've been in it for a while. But outside of the few people that are really looking at this, people aren't unless they're really, really in the know, and they're actually probably building it out to scale, like AWS or Google and those guys. But there's so much potential that's not even being looked at. That's going to be untapped, and industries are going to be being built. I know I've seen a lot of podcasts and conversations about what are they going to do with the job market, and I mean, if you look at, and that's why I tried to make the analogy from the, say, 1830s, 40s, 50s up to about the 1900s. There was a massive industrial revolution that happened. I mean, you went from the horse and carriage to cars, and then airplanes in the 1900s, and people may have been displaced in a way, but these new industries allow them to go into different industries, like data centers. I see data center cities popping up, I mean, from the ground up, and cities like New York and Boston, they're going to get upgrades, but you're going to have new cities pop up, and they're going to be autonomous robots. People are going to live there, but, are robots going to do all the electrical work? I don't know. Are they going to do all the drywall work? I don't know, but there's going to be work there for people to do, and industries being built, and people who want to be creative and entrepreneurial, they're going to find these niches, and they're going to do very, very well. So maybe job displacement might be, an issue for some, but I think, humanity can adapt. We've adapted through tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years before we came along, and I think we're going to be okay with it. But getting back to your point, the things that are going to be creatives are just going to be amazing, just really amazing.
Yeah, I think there's a huge there was a gap in the early 2000s to maybe the 2010s where it was hammered into every uh, young person who's 20s or 30s that the best way to proceed into the next chapter is you have to go to college. You have to go to college. You have to go to. It was like
Yep.
hammered into that generation, and it's very ironic though because like you mentioned the drywall, the HVAC, the servicing of these smart cities in the future here. The winners in this gap period are going to actually be the tradespeople because they are servicing the old and the new, and there that whole little generation there will become that $50 to $100 plus an hour a wage area because uh, there's just right now there's just not enough, and so those that are smart within those fields will be investing into these data and power generation and all these things. So we're going to see a lot of winners come about from the trades, as well as the people that are smart within the finance sector too. Those that maneuver their capital well will reap the benefits and transition over. And you're right, we are in a industrial revolution style thing where the old world is no longer fitting the needs of where we are headed. So therefore, things must change, and that change is sometimes uncomfortable. But as I say to many of my friends, change is the only constant. So therefore, uh, learn to love it and learn to live it because that is the nature of life. Things are ever changing, and embracing it is the best thing that you can do to proceed your life forward in a positive direction. So I think that's really exciting because it means that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for a lot of people who were told that if you don't go to college, you won't make a lot of money. I think those people are going to end up making a lot of money. And then I think that people that have the foresight for data, compute, power generation are going to win out as well. So I think there's multiple ways to win going into the future. I think a lot of people right now see the future as very bleak, but in my opinion, I see it as very exciting and very open to entrepreneurial endeavors.
Oh, I am too, and I think a good example of this is Samsung, right?
Hmm.
When Samsung first came out, they were into everything. They're into food processing, insurance, uh, textiles, things like that, and they were able to pivot and evolve, right? And now they're huge into electronics and everything. They're into everything. And I think that's where the world's going to move to. People, to your point, finance isn't going to be the typical finance we're seeing today. I see a lot of these tech companies. I mean, they're behemoths, right? And actually, the Mag Seven, and Mag Seven's holding up the S&P 500 right now, for the most part.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, J.P. Morgan's huge. Don't get me wrong. There's huge banks as well, financial institutions. But when that revenue starts coming in off of all this data, as we said earlier, off the Teslas, the Optimus, the phones, whatever the devices are, that's a segment that no one is paying attention. Well, very few are paying attention to it. And the revenue generating off that, because everything's going to run off of AI, and there's going to be a structural change in finance and tech companies, even down to the laborers. The laborers are going to say, whoa, I can hire half the people and have a couple robots, but I still need people doing it. And there's still going to be people there, and other people are going to find other industries. And there's industries that are going to be built that aren't even thought of right now. And I think people are missing that when they say no one's going to have a job and AI is going to take over the world. AI is going to take over the world, but people, and Samsung's a great example, people in humanity are able to adapt to whatever conditions they're in. That's one great thing about humanity.
100%. I think you hit on a good point where it's almost like with the Mag 7, it's almost like an inverted gold rush where the people in the gold rush who sold the picks and shovels made the money and didn't take all the risk. But right now with chips, everyone's so heavy into these companies that are trading at these crazy multiples right now, and they're solely focusing on like CoreWeave, solely focusing on the chips themselves, but not actually focusing on the data transmission, the ability to actually convey or relay the data. So you have this inverted gold rush where everyone said, okay, we're going into the picks and shovels, but the reality is the real capture is in the flow of that, of the movement of it. So it's kind of like an inversion of the thinking is everyone is so heavy over into the chips, and that's why we like the hardware agnosticness of Theta. They can pivot, they can adjust, they can change. They did a great job changing when they realized that the deflationary elements of the CDN market just brought the cost for video low, that there was no more market for them to capture there. And they said, okay, what can we capture with what we've built? And it's blossomed into this beautiful web of like an oil pipeline that's just being laid just all around the globe, and has no actual need for the let's say connectivity directly. And if people pull their nodes down, new nodes come about, and I think that's beautiful.
Absolutely. And to your point on, people unstaking and staking their nodes, that's going to be a great key driver for when Mitch had mentioned they're looking to lock up 2 billion, 2 billion Tfuel, which is actually 4 billion, because when you lock it up, you need the first 2 billion to stake, and then you lock up the second 2 billion. So that's your 4 billion. And when that happens, that stabilizes the network, right? Because these big players aren't here to say, okay, I want 1 billion Tfuel, and I'm just going to trade it on the open market and short it when I want and sell it, do buy and sell whatever I want to do it. It's a network. And these companies understand this. And when they lock it up, that ether is not going to see the light of day once that's locked up by these big companies to stabilize that network. And that's going to be the magic of this, right? Because that allows the network to be stable and then scale up. And then you have all these outside other nodes, as you and I were discussing earlier, the cars, the robots, whatever they are, to just enhance that network even more.
Right, exactly. And then that plays into the thesis of validator nodes being large-scale companies that are looking to just make sure that no matter what progression occurs within the edge nodes that are underlying their own progression, they are always recapturing value back to themselves. And one of my thesis is that, like you said with the Mag 7, they are at a really weird point where everyone is very levered against these organizations, these companies, and innovators are truly getting punished right now without IP. I saw that Elon and Jack Dorsey, I disagree with them where they say, oh, we should get rid of patents. And I think patents are the only thing right now that really protect and preserve innovators against AI copying and corruptibility. Right, we saw that with DeepSeek. That really worries me because there is this just basically this funnel if you run an ISP. So with Theta, it really puts a moat on them. And then we saw that Meta is now collabing with Google because they don't have enough infrastructure.
Yep.
Something like Theta basically creates this consortium where all boats rise with the tide, and they're not completely just, you spend a bunch of money and then you destroy that capital when the person copies you. That's really what I'm worried about. I'm worried about this crazy ebb and flow value destruction through AI where you innovate and then you copy and destroy value in terms of dollars or in terms of the money you spent into the thing. So protecting and preserving that is of the utmost importance in my opinion. And I think Theta with their validators does that well, because then anything that's put through the edge nodes is becoming a value gain. And look at the indexes, they are all up and to the right. Why? Because there is always someone pushing through 401ks, through pensions, retirement funds, just adding capital to the base. So it almost acts like a JLP for those who know Jupiter or GMX, these index coins, and they're continually adding capital to them. Theta becomes the great stabilizer in this equation, because otherwise it just becomes really, really choppy and really messy with all these people pushed out onto the risk curve.
No, I couldn't agree more. I don't agree with Jack Dorsey or Elon on the patent idea either. Because it's important, right? As you said, the validators are there. You have your edge cloud, and those subchains are going to run off of all those autonomous, whatever they are, whether they're robots, cars, and those subchains are going to be their accounting and auditing system. And they're going to be subchains among subchains. I see AI agents, right, on them, because AI is training itself right now. So I see these AI robots and agents creating their own subchains outside of what maybe the purview of that middle management is looking at, humans looking at, because they're going to know at that instant what's better. And out of those subchains are going to create tokens, right? Whether it's their own token, whether Keydrop's going to be integrated into that as well. This is a complete sticky service, from running your AI models and getting the compute, to having your agents, and to having your subchains do whatever they're doing business wise, right? You might have, and I'm making this up just maybe so I'm being understood, right? You might have an AI agent run a department, and they say, you know what, I need a subchain for this type of finance. I need a subchain for this type of HR. I need a subchain for whatever it might be, and they're going to create subchains on that, which are going to be tokenized in a way. Now, whether they use Tfuel, T-drop, or they create their own tokens, I don't know exactly how that looks because I'm not on the know on that stuff, but that's kind of the way I see all this. These subchains are going to be indefinite, right? I mean, what Jensen Huang said, he wants 100 million AI just for Nvidia alone. Imagine how many subchains could come out of that. It's going to be interesting.
Right. You definitely need these siloed. They want their own like little like sandbox, and they want their own place to engage and control the environments that they are dealing with, and then you're right, with AI agents, allow the agents to go out and make their own subchains, and then we see the growing from there, right? So then you have all this compute creating more compute. So the compute is actually doing the work itself, and it's not human input. We are currently in the human input to AI chapter. We are not in the AI compute creating more compute chapter, which is coming soon. So with that being said, then you just have this ever expanding just inputs and just inputs on top. It just goes crazy from there.
Oh, absolutely, and more to your point, right? All that data that has to be stored somewhere. So they're not going to go through an outside entity, meaning an AI agent or the company or anybody else. They're not going to look outside if they have everything into this whole network, and the storage is right there, and they're going to pay for that storage through Tfuel. And that's good. That data, as you said earlier, is completely exponential. It's just going to go up and up and up and continue to grow. As you said, we're not quite there yet, but that I agree with you. That's where I see all this going.
Yeah, it's just it's gonna be like a inflationary print. It's gonna be a hockey stick up, and it's just gonna grow and grow and grow from there. Uh, the expansion of these subchains just could be endless, basically. So how do we handle all of that when we don't even have the power capacity to do all that we are aspiring to do? So now that is the value capture. That is where why we even are doing Theta Communications, right? And why are people standing up power solutions and new ideas? Is there's a value capture there, and as a young entrepreneur, or your goal is to try to fill those gaps and close those arbitrages. Everything is about closing some form of arbitrage in society to make society better or find an improvement. And that is business. Business is just closing all the arbitrages that you can find. And I think, though, with compute, though, it's a little different because you're at the beginning stage of a arbitrage that no one sees, right? It's this massive, it's not even grown yet, and it's like going to be this massive titan that needs to be serviced constantly. And that servicing is going to provide an immense amount of returns for people that engage with it properly. Again, not financial advice, but you know.
Well, no, you're right. I mean, yeah, no. Well, it's not financial advice because you're looking at a sector. I mean, if you take Nvidia, and they went for, don't quote me on the exact number of years. Say they went 20 to 25 years, and they had decent growth, and all of a sudden they went to be a hockey stick, right?
Right.
Because they found the niche. The physics found out how to make this work. And again, I'm not a tech guy, so I'm talking very broad. I'm sure people could correct me on exactly how I'm speaking, but the physics and the chips and how they figured that out, they're like, boom, we got it, right? Now they're at a point where saying, man, well, they can to a degree, as you're saying, but they're capped on almost how much they can actually produce, and it's not even enough. They can't keep it in stock. And Theta fills that gap. As this goes, people are saying, again, this is not financial advice at all, but you look at how things are going and rolling out. There's an infrastructure, software infrastructure being built. And whether this takes off or not, that's another story, right? I can't predict the future. But from what I'm seeing, compute is needed. Compute is water in the Sahara Desert, and there's one guy that has a little water well, and there's a stream of people looking for it, right? And they'll pay anything they can get to that water so they don't dehydrate and die. And this is kind of where compute's at, right? They're saying, man, I need more, I need more, I need more, I need more. How can we get more? Theta's trying to solve this. They're trying to build this out as they're going right now. And I see, as you said, if you're in early enough and you understand how this works, the potential gains could be pretty good. But, we got to see how it all rolls out. And having the IP that they have and the partnerships that they have look very promising. But again, we have to see how this industry goes.
I think the IP is super slept on. I think a lot of people, have been really just kind of, they snub their nose at IP because of what we've done with Chinese goods and how we've handled certain infractions with IP law. I think what people don't realize, though, is that if Google ties their horse to Theta or a Samsung or another large company, they have the capabilities and the lawyers and the bankroll to protect and preserve the castle. Basically, they just bought a moat. Theta is basically a moat on their castle, and if they acquire or they participate within, they have an incentive to use that moat against enemies within the U.S., or at least make the competitor use it as well. And if they are a validator, then the value capture just goes vertical for themselves. So with patents, I think, and the condensing of the innovation timeline, patents, 15, 20 years at most, so that gives Theta, in terms of the exponential age where growth is hockey sticking up, that's a century. That's a century in terms of the exponential age.
Well, yeah, I think you're right, because the IP really helps them out. And, I was, I put those patents out years ago, and I was really interested in what was going on because of those patents. And I said to myself, just what you said, if they're going to build out what they're building out and it's successful and it catches on, and these big players, AWS, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Alibaba, get into this game, right? The sticky services that they have, meaning the subchains, the validators, the storage, the NFT portion of it, all of that is captured into one. If the patent expires 20 years from their first patent, I'm just using around them to say 2018 it came out, their patent started in 2018, 20 years, that's 2038. You look at that, the infrastructure is already built. Who's going to compete against something like that when you have the world using that? People can open it up and try to. Maybe they get really low-hanging fruit. But I look at it where they locked in, and anyone can use this as well, right? So there's really no barrier to entry, right? You can just, if you want a booster, buy a booster. If you want a validator, buy a validator. If you just want to run nodes on your devices, like a Tesla or an Optimus, and use those as nodes, anyone can get into this game at any level they want to. And once that's structured through a world global decentralized network, I mean, I think that's very difficult to compete with a network like that. Now, will technology change in the next 20, 30 years? Absolutely. Anything can change. But as we're in the ground level, and as I say, as AI is at the ground level and working out their hardware, working out their software, and building this network, the opportunity cost to get in on this for these companies couldn't be better, with being secured patents that people can't just rip it off, and you have 17 different networks trying to do the same thing. Because I think that, as you said, that gets very cumbersome, and then you could, you'd have worries about fraud or whatever else might be happening, But the moat, as you're saying, is a great analogy to what's happening right now.
Right. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do, but also the fact that the US is, in my opinion, probably going to get very crypto friendly. And because of that, Theta, one thing that Theta has going for it as well too that I think people sleep on, they have time in market as a crypto asset, right? So if there is tax incentives on American made cryptos, they may use duration in that calculation, right? For how much incentive or how much discount you get. Um, for because this isn't just so if they put all these perks on for crypto companies coming in, the distribution of Theta has value versus some other company that says, oh my gosh, they put tax incentives in place, let me start a company. Theta has skin in the game already as a made in the USA organization. So therefore, things like Aether, I believe Aether was spawned out of frustration with the US. They are founded in Singapore. And if Theta has a tax incentive or a tax advantage in the US, it's great that Aether is underlying some of the edge nodes because then all of the revenue streams are going to maneuver to the tax advantaged or revenue positive areas where they keep and expense the best on their business model. So that piece where the token has time in market for what now almost 10 years, I would say, that time in market is completely being overlooked because it's not a metric that people track. And it's something, though, that is very important. It's why these assets, certain assets, have been labeled not securities. And if they greenlight crypto as the new driving economic piece of the U.S. economy, then Google and all these other organizations are going to look at Theta. They're probably going to try like to make their own networks, right? But they're going to realize that the community is the network, and if they can get that moving without having to kind of like try to capture everything right up front, they can then utilize Theta as this decentralized network and not be holding the full risk of the network itself, right? They can distribute that risk out and they can then just participate as a validator and then say they, are growing this thing without having to have the burden of uptime or any of these other underlying structural components.
Now, you're right that the larger this goes, the better it is for everybody. All the ships are going to rise with the tide. And he doesn't care about that. I shouldn't say that. He cares about the sales, but that's not a driving force for him. He's making money on the back end revenue by leasing. He can lease out compute through his hardware that he's already doing. There's just so much money to be made in this, and you put the taxes on top of that and reduce taxes. They're talking no capital gains, and maybe no taxes on certain portions of this. I mean, it's the driving force on this, and the amount of money that's going to be made is going to be wild. And the larger this is, the better it is for the American companies because they can expand out. We're no longer, it's going to be, doing business in the. I understand things are global, but we're touching almost every single person in the world who has any type of device with AI, and Jensen understands that. Adding the tax reductions on that, adding any type of incentive being a USA-based company for these outside entities, just like you said, Aether is just nothing but positive things for all these companies and for the U.S. to allow this to happen.
Right, exactly. So like Theta provides a discount for utilizing the edge cloud. So then there's also a tax incentive on top. So you have a double discount by going through the Theta channel. And that's what makes Theta so slept on in this space. People don't realize that there's going to be huge incentives to if Tfuel, if there's no tax on Tfuel and it's truly a commodity and it's being greenlit as such, then the the expansion process is really insane. It's gonna be really cool to witness, especially after Theta. You know, a lot of people snubbed their nose a little bit in the AMA when they said, "Oh, we're just doing marketing. We're looking at marketing now." And I pushed back on some of those people and said, "Well, you got to realize that the team with the uncertain environment with crypto in the U.S. too." Was not able to do any form of marketing until this green light process happened because you're on shaky ground because crypto was like, okay, is it a security, is it not a security, but now it's starting to become, hey, we need crypto to grow the US. And if that's the case, then looking at marketing now becomes a viable option for Theta Labs, and then it really expands from there because they're then able to do the things that, us at Theta Communications, we realized that early on. It's why we started really making content. We also want to obviously expand the edge nodes, expand, revenues. But ultimately was that Theta can't do certain things in terms of marketing during these past few chapters. So our goal was to fill some of those gaps, bring knowledge to people, and try to engage them where Theta Labs may not be able to because of legal reasons, right?
You're absolutely right. I saw a comment made. I forget who it was. We'll say it was on X. I forget who had mentioned it. And the just to get into the game, some of these companies needed $100 million war chest just for legal fees before they're going to build anything out because they were just being hammered by the SEC. And you listen, I don't care what industry, what business you're in. There's no way any industry or business can be successful by starting off like that, And these companies that were, I'm not going to get into whether they're great utilities or they're great companies or anything else, but they're trying to build something for the future. And when you're trying to build something for the future and you're worrying about literally 10, 20, 30, $100 million legal fees just to get through the SEC, just to be able to play, that's absurd. And I believe Theta did a great job of steering away from the Coinbases, the Robinhoods, all these exchanges, because as soon as some of these companies went on the exchanges, boom, they got sued. And you can't develop a worldwide infrastructure that they're trying to do by worrying about, oh man, we have $100 million for legal fees. How are we going to pay developers? How are we going to build this out? That's crazy. Once the infrastructure is built, and they pivoted, right? And Theta pivoted from CDN over to compute. So they not only understood the client, and I think this is what a lot of people are missing. They're building something for the client. CDN was, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, however many years ago, they wanted to get into the game of CDN costs. That dropped dramatically. So, whoa, the market shift to compute, this is said on the AMA today, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if they had to worry about, they started building out CDN, now they pivoted to compute, and oh wait, by the way, I have the SEC breathing down my neck. I got to come up with $50 million just to protect what I'm trying to build out. I haven't even built anything out yet. It's absurd. So I believe the U.S. government's going to ease restrictions more, ease taxes more. Again, not financial advice. I just see it that way because if Trump's saying, hey, he's saying it's this saying, we got to be number one in AI, crypto, and Bitcoin, they're going to have to ease this up.
100%. They definitely will. And this is the cost of growth, and them expanding and being able to have an easier time within the US is such a sigh of relief. And the other part that I think a lot of people don't take into account when, a lot of people talk on Twitter about, well, why haven't they done this? Why haven't they done that? I have some startup teams that are completely stressed out by not just the financial burden of audits, which are very expensive for smart contracts, right, when you're writing code, but also the stress of what if what if my code has an issue? What if the smart contract fails? What if there's an extraction event? The stress of that from some of these teams I've dealt with is immense, and many of them get very, if they're not super passionate about it and super confident, they get so burnt out they don't want to do it anymore. So the fact that Theta has been able to run this for the amount of years that they have is a testament to their integrity and the quality of the code that they've stood up over the years. So I give them major props because uh, it's not an easy thing to do. I've seen it at the ground level, and it wears on these people. They literally age before my eyes from the stress of getting the 2 a.m. call that, hey, someone did this, someone leveraged this, and it caused this issue. It's challenging. It really is. So big props to them for being able to maneuver this challenging space.
No, I couldn't agree more. I mean, from where crypto was, I remember when Bitcoin came out in 2009, 2010, and nobody knew about it. People were talking about it, and it was built up, and then that was even more the Wild West, right? I mean, there was no tax laws, there's no nothing on it, and as that progressed, into, I want to say the first, I don't know, maybe I'm a little wrong on this, but be 20 and 21, I felt a lot of utility tokens were starting to come out against
Mm.
with a lot of these other meme coins,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of them were still pump and dumps. I mean, but they were trying to build something out of it, and for Theta to sit back and just solely focus on what they were trying to do and then pivot. I mean, it's and on top of that, having the developers just being able to execute. We haven't even spoke about the execution that no one's seeing because we're not behind those closed doors. Building out a worldwide infrastructure. I mean, I had IT teams when I was running some companies, and just to get them to build financial models for me was like painstaking sometimes. And that was just financial models within a company. They're building something global, and they're listening to the customer, they're building it out, they're testing, and that's when we're going to see whenever they're ready to fully launch these products. It's and to do this even in a 10-year period is just amazing to me. And I'm not even a tech guy, you know.
Right. The big moment for me was their CDN pivot to then NFTs. They stood up that website. They got Stripe all connected. Everything was set up within a very short time span and was functional to a large amount of users. And just being able to go from this streaming thing to this other website with payment function built in, with tradability built in, and then being able to then stand up the edge cloud, that was all within less than a 10-year period. I know many teams that struggle just to do one of those things. So the ability to maneuver through those segments shows that their capabilities and their adaptability. And that alone is something I'm looking at where they are very moldable with whatever comes next, and that's very rare. Many people hit their first speed bump and they immediately are like, what are we going to do, how are we going to proceed from this changes everything. Theta team doesn't do that. They continually flow like water and continue to move with whatever curve comes their way.
Absolutely, and they prided themselves on passing Howey tests for those NFTs, and they really made sure they dotted their I's, crossed their T's, and were doing the best job they possibly could to show not only the community and the people who were interested in this, but also the government, SEC, whoever was looking at this as well, and patenting this stuff all at the same time. It's really an amazing just to watch this happen, and it's an exciting time to be alive. It really is.
Truly, truly is. Joe, this has been a great conversation with you. We are hitting the 1 hour mark, and I'd say that's a good amount right there. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I love seeing all your posts over on X. You do a great job of conveying where we are headed and the ever-growing oil field that is Theta and data and GPUs and AI as a whole. Appreciate you hopping on this call with me, and I look forward, of course, to seeing you on Tfuel Island.
And thanks for having me. It's great, and it's your service that you provide is invaluable to the community, invaluable to this space, and very visionary. And I'm honored you had me on and want to have a discussion, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Same here, my friend. All right, that is all for tonight. Thank you very much. Look forward to the comments in the video. And as always, of course, again, Tfuel Island. Take care. Bye-bye.